All right, we are riding to Chelsea. How should I go here? I think I'm gonna go on the sidewalk. I don't like this. I don't like this buses and postal trucks and stuff. So it is a little chilly today. Not gonna lie, it's like 50 degrees. I'm actually wearing gloves. Like thicker gloves. My hands will probably get pretty warm pretty soon as I ride here, but kind of have to pick between two extremes. My hands get very cold in normal conditions, like in an office and stuff. They feel like, you know, just frozen hands. So I have to sort of go between two extremes where my hands are sweaty or or like frostbitten, you know? Not a lot of in between. So here we are up at Morningside, 110. Terrible 4-lane intersection. Cars left, right, and center. Everywhere you go. Now I have to wait for these. All this. Well, I probably could have worn a t-shirt here. Walk signal. Of course, there's zero traffic signals for cyclists, so nobody has a clue what they're supposed to do. Try to make a left turn across 4 lanes of traffic. There's no easy way to do it. In fact, I just got news. 26 cyclists has died today from injuries from like a month ago, I think. And I don't know exactly the details. I just read it quickly this morning, but it sounds like she was making a left turn through oncoming traffic, right? So you had like a two-way traffic. And, you know, they tell you to operate like a vehicle, and the vehicle would make a left turn. Like it's incredibly unsafe, even for drivers, when you have to look at oncoming traffic. So this isn't a good example because this is all one way. But where I guess 106 is a better example, where you have to sort of look and eyeball like how fast the car is coming. You may not be able to see oncoming traffic depending on, you know, if you're in behind trucks or whatever, like this kind of nonsense here. Look at how I have to now go with this bus right here. Nobody lets you in. Just so that this guy can double park. And now what am I supposed to do? Am I expected to then swerve back into the bike lane so that I can swerve back out and try to merge around this garbage truck? No, that's insane. But if this guy kills me, police would say I'm not in the bike lane. Because, you know, as we know, cyclists move like perpendicular. They just move out whenever there's an obstruction, and then they move back in, just like how, you know, that's how cars like parallel park. They just move straight in, perpendicular. No, yeah, so I think what happened with this, oh, there's a parent with a child biking. Always love to see that. And so I think she was probably going on a street that probably looks something like this, but probably 2 lanes, like 4 full lanes. This particular one has a road diet. You can see there's a bike lane on both sides. There's this center turn lane, and then only two travel lanes. But if you had a situation where you had 2 travel lanes on both sides, you have a 4-lane speedway. That's a lot of what like Brooklyn and these other areas look like that have not been treated. And when you are trying to make a left turn on a bike, God help you. God help you if you're in a car trying to make a left turn. Because you got to go through 4 lanes, potentially 4 lanes of traffic. You got to get, well, first you got to get into the leftmost lane, what's now this turning lane. And then you got to like eyeball drivers coming at you and then swerve in front of them, basically. Like that's how we've designed turning for cars, like for drivers. It is the most insane thing when you think about it. Like we have like left turn only technology. Oh, look at this thing. Oh, it's the Copenhagen wheel this guy in front of me has. This is an electric bike, but the way they do it is they put a red disc on the back wheel. It's called the Copenhagen wheel. Of course, named after among the most bike-friendly cities in the world. And you can see he's just a mile in front of me already there. Oh, what a sight. That's cool. I've only read about that thing. I've never actually seen it in the wild. So when you have these streets that are designed poorly, like these streets are already, it's not like no driver gets killed and no driver gets into crashes, and then the introduction of cyclists are problematic for these streets which are optimized for moving vehicles. Like that's not at all how it is. These streets are insanely poorly designed. Everything about them is poorly designed. Super wide streets. Like there are areas, there's tons and tons of cities. Most of the fatalities, which there's 40,000 car deaths each year. Traffic violence is the #1 cause of death for, I think, children, anybody under 18, for sure. I think it's like, I don't know what it is. It ranks up there, right? I mean, whenever they talk about gun deaths are only second to car deaths, but somehow car crashes are always like, well, that's just, you know, that's just how it is. But guns we can do something about. But cars, I mean, you know, what can you do? We already have licensing. It's just the way, it's just accidents, you know? It's just accidents happen here in America like 10 times as much as deadly as in all of Europe. Yeah. So you gotta wonder, like, well, what is the problem? And the problem is these streets are so poorly designed for moving anybody safely, because it's not clear who has the right of way most of the time. Really wide streets do not make it safe to get through places. Like you can't make a turn. Yeah, I remember when I drive, I'm terrified. You're like, you drive and you're like, you know, a typical thing is in the suburbs, you'll drive, you'll often see streets that are like 40-mile-an-hour streets with driveways sort of jutting right into them, and little stop signs. you know, where you'll frequently get into situations where you're like, don't come out, buddy, and you'll be sort of a little honk at a driver sitting at a stop sign about, you know, perpendicular to your 40-mile-an-hour road, who may take a risky maneuver, right, and jut out a little more, maybe floor it to get out and merge into the highway or whatever, the 40-mile-an-hour road. And like, that's how it's designed. And you look at this, anybody can take one look at this and be like, what do you guys, what happened here? What went wrong? How did you create something that's just all conflict points all the time, where nobody really knows who's supposed to go, and you can't possibly negotiate these kinds of situations without predictable crashes happening? Like, they will happen. They do happen, and they always will happen unless the design changes. So, meaning, you know, you don't have like buffer, or you don't have slow zones, and, you know, and cues and things. All you have are cues that tell drivers to speed up at every interval, at every position, right? It's super wide lanes that are extremely forgiving on turns and things like that. So you can take these turns, you know, at 50 miles an hour if you want to. And then, of course, if you get killed or you crash or whatever, it's you lost control of your car. You lost control, which makes no sense, obviously. Yeah, I lost control of my Ferrari. Speeding might have been a factor in this death that involved a Maserati, a red, you know, $200,000 Lamborghini or whatever. But anyway, that's what I think is interesting, is like, these streets are very poorly designed for drivers. I don't understand why drivers aren't more arguing more aggressively for safer design just for drivers. Like, just to say, look, we should have left turn only lights and things like that. These things are funky. You know, and those things are like so rare. They're gonna do them, I think they're gonna do a road diet in Riverdale. But people are so stupid. I mean, a lot of these people, I shouldn't say that. They're misguided. They believe like whatever their eyes tell them and nothing else. So they're like, well, if you reduce space, any space for cars, then we will have less mobility, right? It will impact me by me not being able to drive as fast through here. It's going to be traffic jams. It's going to delay me. I'm not going to have space to store my car, yada yada, right? Because all they see is just a somewhat reduction in space, when the opposite is true. It's very much like not at all what you expect. I mean, you reduce the number of lanes for drivers, you actually reduce the amount of movement that they can make, right? If you say, all right, you can only go straight, or if you cut, for example, if you eliminate parking on the side of whatever, Central Park West, you eliminate also all of the people who are attempting to park on Central Park West, or all the people who are circling around aimlessly trying to find spaces. And when somebody's trying to parallel park their car in the middle of, you know, Central Park West on one of those two lanes that are supposed to be bringing people so fast through neighborhoods, it blocks all the traffic for everybody. And it does it at random times, right? Nobody's really like measured this kind of stuff, but you sense it all when you're a cyclist, when you're just riding through, and you are always on edge because somebody is about to pull out of a parking space, somebody's about to pull up in front of you, stop short, and then, you know, back into you to parallel park into a parking space. That's why these door zone garbage painted bike lanes are garbage and deadly, and frankly, like, they should be outlawed and replaced immediately with concrete protected bike lanes, eliminate all the parking next to it, all the car storage, excuse me, free car storage, and give cyclists a safe way through. Or, you know, reduce the space for cars, like just narrow the travel lane. Simply narrowing a travel lane makes it, gives the cue to drivers to slow down. And frankly, like, I don't have a problem riding with 10 or 15 mile an hour cars. When people are driving at that speed, you can absolutely ride with them. It's not that dangerous, right? But we need the city to actually do something. Right now, all roads, basically all roads, are treated as if they're highways, with the kind of cues that drivers take as, okay, I can speed here. Oh, I can just floor it from this end of the block to that end of the block, because there's like not a lot of stuff in the way. There's nothing that really says don't do this, except for like an occasional you know, go slow, or oh, there's a road hump, and they're like, all right, I guess with this road hump I have to slow down a little bit just to get over it without, like, I don't know what. I've seen drivers go through wow, this is terrible here. I've seen drivers just like on 25th Street, I think it's 25th, there's a road pillow, I think that's what they call it, of you know, these road humps that basically are like in the middle of the street, like part of the way. They really should be at all crosswalks, right? Because that's where you want people to slow down the most, and yet they're not, right? You want them to be uncomfortably like positioned if they are over the stop line. They never are. So but I've seen drivers just take those things at 25 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour. Like, that doesn't really slow you down to like 5 miles an hour or whatever they're intended to do. I think it's, again, it's part of this larger theme of like never disrupting drivers and doing, like, I wouldn't even call it the bare minimum, because it's not even effective. It's not even like, there's no effective level. You know, it's like drugs or medications have like minimum effective dose, or I think, let me try to remember my physics, but you have like valence electrons or something like that, where you have a minimum, oh man, I don't remember. You have like a minimum amount of energy that's required to free an electron from an atom. And anything below that has no impact, has no effect. But then once you have it, it's like, then it's effective, right? And that's kind of what they're doing. They're just staying like below this effective level, which would be things like raising crosswalks, you know, red light cameras, narrowing streets to the point where it's literally narrowed, where like there's only a few inches on either side of your wheel. So you actually do have to go through relatively slowly. Of course, there will still be people that blow through those kinds of areas. I mean, I've seen those, you see this kind of treatment all over Europe. When we were in Barcelona, we saw it. And I just remember, like, there were certainly still like drivers who went a little too fast along those kind of really narrow streets, but it was very rare to see that. And I think that's what's interesting, is like, you don't, again, like the bike infrastructure in the Netherlands, like you don't need to learn anything. You don't need to take a class on how to make a left turn in Amsterdam. You just follow the infrastructure, and all the cues are right there. And they will, if you follow the bike lanes and the bike paths and the bakfiets, the fiets pads, you will be safe, you know? You they're signaling for all pedestrians, for drivers, for cyclists, right? There's actual signals for each one of those modes. So you know, like when there's a green light, you pretty much are good to go safely, and you feel pretty confident. When you're making a turn, like turns are so deadly. Turns can be like the scariest thing because, right, you don't really know, you're trying to negotiate an intersection where if you could make eye contact with people, then yeah, maybe it's not a big deal. And that's why, like in the Netherlands and a lot of Europe, like there are no traffic signals in lots of pedestrianized zones, particularly, you know, places that have cars coming through as well, but they're coming at such a slow speed and there's so many queues for them that it's relatively painless to negotiate who gets right of way. I mean, it is frankly, pedestrians get right of way almost every time, right? Like all the time. And you can make eye contact with a driver in a relatively small vehicle going at a pretty slow rate. You cannot when they're going 40 miles an hour in like a giant SUV. And there, I don't make a big thing of anything. I'm not really in a rush, I don't care. But dude standing in the middle of the bike lane with a stop sign, not actually like looking and aware that there are cyclists that come through, kind of needs to be reminded that there are cyclists coming through. But I don't even honk. I don't honk. I don't use my bell. I just stop. I'm like, it's fine. I'll slow down. I'm not really like looking for conflict, you know? Find it, I don't know, a little more effective if you just sort of slowly creeping behind somebody who's not supposed to be there. And they look around and they're like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize what was going on. You're like, no, yeah, no big deal. Just, you know. That's also why I don't go very fast. That's why I ride. That's why I ride the city bike. You know, it's big, it's blue, it doesn't go particularly fast. So, man, yes, it's been a little while. I took a week off from biking. Kinda. My thumb kind of hurts a little bit. So I'm just sort of taking it easy. It's not from bike. I don't think it's not from biking. I think I just strained it a little bit. I'm not even totally sure. I think it's getting better, but didn't want to push it. Didn't really know if biking was like not helpful, because obviously like city bike is a great bike, but this greenway is nice, but when you get on the other streets, they're so bumpy that they really can do damage to your wrists and to your joints and stuff. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm like, I was actually doing anything like hurting my wrists or not, but I just figured I didn't want to take any chances or anything. So now my hands are actually a little sweaty. It's at 50th Street. So I've already been riding for, I don't know, 30 minutes, let's say. 25 to 30 minutes. And it's like it's like 50 degrees. And I'm wearing pretty kind of heavy gloves. Not super heavy, but reasonably heavy. Let's see. I would love if cars had your carbon emissions next to your speedometer, right? Just as part of it. Like, you have contributed, 28,000 pounds of carbon. Something like that would be really interesting. I was thinking about that on a drive. I was in Boston, and we were driving home, And because here's where I've been thinking a lot about is you think like, oh, you know, which is the least, how much carbon do you contribute as an individual, and based on your mode of transportation or whatever, right? And so the argument goes, oh, if you fly, therefore you are contributing the most, you know, a ton of carbon, because airplanes obviously emit a huge amount of carbon. That guy is like one of the only guys with a recumbent bike like that. It's like riding a Lamborghini. I'm telling you, a lot of the people here just ride pretty neat bikes, you know? You see all kinds of stuff when you're out here. Anyway, and so that's the sort of I would say that's the kind of conventional wisdom, is you take how much carbon the mode of transportation you're taking, like a bus or a train or whatever, and you divide it by the number of passengers for that trip. And that's like fine, right? But my argument is that I think it's a lot more nuanced than that, because here's my argument. I just read that half of all trips by car are less than 3 miles in America. And just like let that sink in, right? Because if you look around and you see the kind of vehicles people have, they're so massive, right? These are like these big trucks. Here they're probably smaller and they're all SUVs. But in wherever, the Midwest, you see like way more of these like big trucks. So my argument is that as the owner of a vehicle, you actually control how much carbon you can emit, because you make a decision and you are the point of carbon creation. Like when you turn the key to your ignition, carbon is generated. That's it. When you drive 2 miles or 10 miles or 150 miles, you are responsible for that carbon. That's not to say that anybody riding, that does not negate like the impacts of all the demand for flights and for whatever, buses and everything else. I'm not arguing that. I think there obviously is, you know, you're responsible for, there's an accountability and an attribution model. But I think, like my thinking is, when you have not been able to take any other mode and therefore you have to take the car, then fine. But in so many of these cases, you can walk 10 minutes and not create, you know, whatever, 3 pounds of CO2. I'm not really articulating this very well, but I do believe that people, if you really want to go after people's behavior and go after the most routine, basic kind of default behavior, not flights. Like, flying is bad. I mean, like, this helicopter is bad, right? But cars are the only mode of transit that people actually own and operate themselves. And so anything beyond that, like when I consider, oh, I'm taking a flight, how much carbon am I personally like emitting, or am I responsible for? I'm not really sure. Like, if I don't buy the ticket, it doesn't negate that flight. That flight's still gonna happen regardless. And that's obviously like probably not a great argument, because that's just a demand argument. If everybody collectively stopped flying, then, you know, obviously there would be far less carbon as a result of flights. Oh man, I'm totally gonna miss this. Yep, I just missed it. I'm still working on this argument. I'm not totally sure. I don't know if it like hits home for anybody yet, but I really do feel pretty strongly like when you, like this guy right there, L32 HVV New Jersey in his Acura SUV, that's one dude who decided I am going to drive, let's say, from my home in wherever, New Jersey, and come into the city and emit however many pounds of carbon by directly doing it from my tailpipe of my SUV that I decided to buy, that has some rate of emission that is higher or less than some other smaller car, right, or some other bigger car. You know, you just like look at all these single occupant vehicles, and they all have access, almost probably 95% of them have access to alternate modes of transportation. They're driving around in the single most transit-rich city in the world, or not the world, but at least America. They can take a bus, they can take trains, subway, they can take all kinds of modes, but they're choosing not to, and that's the difference. I think you can argue like, oh, well, you have to take a car to get a toothpaste because we've built a car-centric city, and there's virtually no way to access, you know, to get from A to B, to get from your home to wherever. And that's an argument. You could say, all right, there is no alternative. There is zero alternative. But the argument for me is that there's zero alternative for me to get to Europe, you know, or to get to wherever. You have to fly. And then it's a different, but where I can, I avoid, wow, this is terrible. Cool, so Art Core, Fine Art Services, blocking the bike lane, 14448ML, unloading in the loading zone. I'm sorry, bike lane. This guy's on his phone. That's got NYPD, 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 FDNY, NYPD. Right, this is all placard abuse here. And I never allowed to do that. So, I don't know. I feel like part of this is for me to just feel a little bit better about flying. I don't want to feel as guilty. But part of it is also like, if you're going to look at people's behavior, then look at the most routine, highly controllable thing. If people just said, you know what, anything under a mile, I'm gonna walk. If you just did that, I think you would probably cut like 3% or 4% of all emissions, right? Something like that, I don't know. 1 mile, 2 miles. 2 miles is really short when you think about it. There's all these stories of these like super congested areas where people who drive hit massive amounts of traffic to go like 3 miles to work, and they switch to a bike and realize like it's literally the same amount of time no matter what. They don't have to get on a highway and, you know, whatever it is. And it's crazy, the most progressive people in the world will still insist on driving. So I don't know, I don't get it. Anyway, so it is getting cooler. Let's see what happens. It's already late October here, but it is 50, 55, 60 degrees here. So I don't know, we'll see how long the bike season is. I'm fine biking, you know, 8-9 months out of the year and saying, all right, I mean, it's not like I'd stop biking entirely in the winter months, but certainly when it's like really cold, no thank you. I'm good. But I did just buy, I bought a hand warmer So what that is a USB charged little, like basically just like a little battery that you just hold in your hand. It's like a little metal USB like charger, essentially. It's like 8,000 milliamps, or milliamp hours, something like that. And it it just heats up like crazy. So this is a mixing zone. I'm gonna mix with these drivers. So yeah, so I'm very excited about these little heating, these little battery things that just heat up, and you just hold them, or you put them in your pockets. And I'm very excited. It's $30 on Amazon. It was a top-rated thing from Wirecutter. Yeah, yesterday it was, or 2 days ago. Yeah, 2 days ago I was in the park, underdressed. I'm not gonna lie. I just had a sort of jacket and a sweatshirt on, and it wasn't the best for me. But then it got kind of cool, and I realized my hands are freezing, and I don't need that. So got myself this thing, and I'm gonna see how it works. See, is the person gonna slow down? No? Okay, good. And that is me. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and catch you on the flip side. Just kidding. There we go. Yeah.